Well, I just finished recording about 3 other album reviews, and I realized I was having this album behind me, and I'm like, yeah, I could totally talk about that one. And I've been looking for an excuse to talk about some of those classic albums that I grew up with. So, yeah, I figured let's talk about this one. So let's dive into it. Trilogy by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. So Trilogy is the 3rd album from the godfathers of progressive rock, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I really love Trilogy. I love the blending of the 2 different styles that this band loves. The fun ragtime style of flair mixed with this really deep classical in the sense of like early 20th century composition classical, big grandiose style of sounds. I really enjoy how this album opens up with the Endless Enigma Part 1 fugue and Endless Enigma Part 2 that equates to probably just under 10 minutes worth of music. This stuff is powerful. Up to this point, this is probably the most sophisticated music that they have written. Like Keith Emerson on the keyboards and the synthesizer and the Moog just bleeds and drips with sound and layering and textures. It's beautiful is what it is, but not just like creating that sound and leaving it there. He's like all over the keyboard, just creating such big things, and Carl Palmer being on the drums, keeping up with him is ridiculous. And then of course rounding up, you've got Greg Lake being on the bass guitar and rhythm guitar. Some of his poetry that's found like From the Beginning and Living Sin. I think these are his 2 big tracks off of these. I really love From the Beginning, of especially like paired right after Endless Enigma Part 2, being a little bit of a come down, a little bit of a somber sorbet. I always want to say Penn's Clouditor, but Cleanse Palater. Palette cleanser. There we go. Dyslexia. At it again. It's a great little foil to the rest. And then it does usher in the 2 fun tracks of The Sheriff and Hoedown. I really love The Sheriff. I love how fun and boppy it is. I also really love the storyline of it. Like, it also reminds me of like Benny the Bouncer a little bit. But I guess The Sheriff is the prelude to that. Not quite as fast or as like bombastic. There's that word again. As say Benny the Bouncer or some of the other tracks. It's just kind of a fun, slower, fun track. And then we get into Hoedown, which is a traditional American piece that I love. Like, I love that. Like, it's a very fun, very fast paced, very get up and go, danceable track. Yeah, I thought like the first side is a great kind of a 1-2 punch where it starts off with the Endless Enigma and then goes into these fun tracks. On the second side, it starts off with, this might be a hot take, but probably their best track ever written of Trilogy, because it blends all the things that I love about Emerson, Lake and Palmer into one track. It opens up with this Greg ballad with Keith's very clean piano approach, and it's a very clean track for the first half of it that allows it to build it up, and it's a very somber, heartfelt, almost lamenting track. But then when we get right to the halfway part, it just does a switch. Like, it builds itself up, and right when it gets to that plateau, it launches itself where it goes from that clean track right into this very electrical track where we have this big synthesizer coming in, and it's this gnarly oomph, and it drives itself into this fast-paced, bombastic oomph. And I am using that term way too often, but it still fits. I just love how big the track becomes after such a small beginning styles, and it never really lets up, and it just continues to build up momentum and kind of getting faster and faster and faster until we get to the end mark where it just kind of lets itself out. Like, it's almost like it ends on that very traditional like kind of thing. Like, it's almost like once they saw where they are, they looked at the audience, and the audience, like, you're either in it or you're not, and the audience is like, what was that? It's like, I'm gonna let myself out then. So I love Trilogy, the title track off of this. And as I mentioned, it's one of the most sophisticated and well-rounded track. Right from where you are at the beginning, right to where you are at the end, it is a journey. And I love how somber and heartfelt it starts off with and being very personal, but then how impersonal and kind of balls to the wall insane it becomes at the end. Very, very well done. And then we come into this a little bit of a strange track of Living Sin, of a shorter track that has Greg. I think it might be Greg. It doesn't necessarily sound like Greg, but it's got like this little bit of a growl, like the like it's got this like deeper back the throat singing styles. Probably is Greg because once it's probably Greg because once he finally gets out of that and he's singing in a cleaner style, you can actually hear his voice. So it's just a little off-putting at the beginning. And then it ends with Abandons Bellero, I think it is. Yeah, Abandons Bellero. This one is like one of the songs that really, really got me into prog, in that it's really just the same couple of bars that are repeated, and it's almost like this march, this like death march of sorts, where they continuously use this theme over and over and over again and just make it larger and larger and larger until it just basically plays itself out. Like, unlike other tracks that do this, like I'm trying to think of other tracks like Shadow of the Hierophant or Crime of the Century, where it just uses these same, or even like Starship Trooper, where it uses the same about 12 to 18 bars and just loop it around and then build from it to create this massive track. It doesn't play out, it ends. And I think that is such a great move, because I do not like when they play these things out. I want a crystal clear ending. And these guys do it very, very well by doing that. And just such a clean finish, like a very perfect clean finish. Really, really enjoyed that one. And yeah, it's such an infectious track as well. Like once it gets into you, that it just kind of goes up the scale in that sense. Anyway, in the end, I friggin' love Trilogy. You know, it's one of my all-time favorite albums, and probably my favorite studio album from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Yeah, I think I put it at number 2 for my Emerson, Lake and Palmer's worst to best. Hey, which you can check out right there. So yeah, it goes without saying that Trilogy from Emerson, Lake and Palmer is an absolute masterpiece.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
I mean, how can it not? It's got everything that I love out of progressive rock, and yeah, it really just continued to solidify how great this style of music is from three geniuses. And luckily they still had one masterpiece under their belt, which I'll talk about eventually. So yeah, that's about it for Trilogy from Emerson, Lake and Palmer. What do you think about this album? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.